Two 6-year-old girls accidentally called their biological father a mafia boss when their mother collapsed onto a kitchen floor soaked in blood. The problem was, he had never known they existed, and the woman bleeding out on that cold linoleum had spent 7 years making sure of it. The microwave clock read 3:14 a.m. when Amelia Hartley folded in half against the cabinet, a strangled gasp tearing from her throat. She had been heating milk for Lily's nightmare, the same dream her daughter kept having, the one about a man with kind eyes she had never met. Then the pain came. It started low in her abdomen, a hot blade twisting behind the surgical scar she had carried since the night her twins were pulled too early from her body. The scar she had been told would heal, the scar that had been quietly betraying her for months, every double shift, every skipped meal, every dollar stretched too thin. The white cotton of her nightgown bloomed crimson before she understood what was happening. Warm, spreading, wrong. "Mommy?" Lily's small voice from the doorway. Then a scream high and thin and terrified. "Rose! Rose! Come quick!" Two pairs of identical gray-blue eyes filled with a fear no child should ever know. Lily dropped to her knees, small hands pressing uselessly against the spreading red. "Mommy, please get up, please, the phone." Rose's voice was sharper, steadier. "Mommy's purse. I'll find it." She tore through the worn leather bag with the focused panic of a child who had watched her mother do this 1,000 times. Her small fingers swiped through the contacts until she stopped. There, at the top of the favorites list, was a name typed in red, a small lock symbol beside it, 3 words that meant nothing to a 6-year-old, and everything to a mother too afraid to delete a single number. "Do not call D.C. Lily." Rose's whisper trembled. "Mommy hid this one on purpose. That means it's important, right? Should I call?" Lily looked up, tears soaked into her mother's hair. "Call it. Call anyone." Rose pressed the green icon at exactly 3:17 a.m. 43 blocks away, on the 40th floor of a glass tower above the East River, Dominic Castellano was reviewing doc manifests with 3 of the most dangerous men in New York. The penthouse was silent the way only places of real power are silent. Tony Russo, his consigliere, slid a folder across the obsidian table. Dominic, 37, and built like a man who had stopped sleeping somewhere around 26, took a slow sip of whiskey. That was when the other phone rang. Not the burner, not the company line. The phone in the inside pocket of his jacket, the one only 5 people on Earth had the number 2. 2 of them were dead. He pulled it out with the calm of a man expecting bad news. The name on the screen stopped his lungs mid-breath. Mia Boston. The whiskey glass slipped from his fingers and shattered. He didn't notice. 7 years of silence. 7 years of swearing he would let her stay gone. He answered before the 3rd ring. "Mia." The voice on the other end was small, wet with tears. Not hers. Mister, who are you? My mommy can't breathe. There's so much blood. Mommy wrote your name in red." Dominic stood so fast his chair hit the wall. "Sweetheart, stay on this phone. Tell me your name." A shaky breath. Then, with brave clarity, "My name is Rose. My twin sister is Lily. My mommy's name is Amelia Hartley." The room went very, very quiet. Tony Russo watched his boss, a man he had seen execute 2 captains in a single afternoon without blinking, go absolutely white. Twins. 6-year-old twins. The math arrived in Dominic Castellano's chest like a bullet finding bone. "Rose, put the phone on speaker. Lay it next to your mom. Stay with her. I'm coming. Are you?" The little voice broke. "Are you the one in mommy's voicemails? The one she plays at night when she thinks we're asleep?" Dominic gripped the table to stay upright. "Stay on the line, baby. Don't hang up." He muted the phone for 1 second. His eyes found Marco at the door, the cousin who had been his shadow since they were teenagers. His voice was the voice of a man who had just been handed a war and a resurrection in the same breath. "Trace this call. Now." The Maserati tore out of the underground garage at 3:23 a.m. with the snarl of an animal finally let off its leash. Dominic Castellano had never driven this fast through Manhattan. The speedometer climbed past 90 as he hit the on-ramp to the Brooklyn Bridge. The phone stayed connected through the car's speakers. Rose's small breaths filled the leather interior. "Rose, talk to me, baby. Is your mom still breathing?" "A little." Her chest goes up and down really slow. "There's so much blood. It's on my hands. Listen to me. I need you and Lily to roll your mom onto her side. Gently, like you're tucking her in. Her face needs to point at the floor so she doesn't choke." 2 tiny grunts of effort came through the speakers. Then Lily's smaller voice. "We did it, mister." A red light bloomed ahead. Dominic blew through it. A taxi laid on its horn. "Rose, You are the bravest little girl I have ever met. I'm almost there. Silence. Then, in the quietest voice he had ever heard, Mister, your voice sounds like the man in the recordings. His hands jerked on the wheel. What recordings? Sweetheart, the ones Mommy plays at night when she thinks we're asleep. She cries. She always cries to the same voice. The Maserati drifted half a lane. He overcorrected, tires biting back into the asphalt. His chest had forgotten how to expand. She had kept his voicemails. For 7 years. Marco's name lit up the dashboard. Boss. Bushwick. 4th floor walk up on Linden. Bad block. We're rolling 3 cars. ETA 12 minutes. I'm 8, Dominic said, and ended the call. Bushwick. She had been raising his children in a walk-up in one of the roughest pockets of Brooklyn, while he had been buying ocean view properties he never slept in. The math did itself. 7 years ago. His mother's gala. Mia, 21, in a borrowed black dress, slipping out before midnight without saying goodbye. 9 months later, if babies came early, 6 years old now. For half a heartbeat, the bridge dissolved. Mia at 21, laughing across a small table in Boston, a smear of cinnamon foam on her lip, him telling her she was the only light in his very dark life. He had put her out, without ever knowing it. He found the building by the open door, brick the color of dried blood, paint peeling in long curls. He took the stairs 3 at a time. The apartment door on the 4th floor stood half open. Yellow light spilled into the hallway. 2 little girls were waiting, identical, dark hair tangled from sleep, matching unicorn pajamas, bare feet, eyes gray-blue, ringed with black that he had been seeing in the mirror for 37 years. The world stopped. Rose stepped forward first. Her chin was up. Her small hands were red with her mother's blood. You have eyes like ours, she said, with the flat clarity of a child stating a fact. Are you our daddy? Dominic Castellano could not speak. Lily tugged on the sleeve of his coat with surprising strength. You can save Mommy first, she whispered. You can ask after. He moved. The kitchen was a horror in fluorescent light. Mia was on her side, curled small, her white nightgown almost entirely red now. Her face was the color of paper, her lips turning gray. He went to his knees, fingers to her throat, a pulse faint, threading. Mia. His voice cracked on the single syllable. 7 years he had not spoken that name aloud. He slid one arm beneath her shoulders and lifted her against his chest. She weighed almost nothing. He remembered her heavier. He remembered her laughing. The girls were already at the door, holding hands. He hit Marco's name. Reyes. St. Catherine's. Private floor. Full lockdown. No one learns her name. Not the front desk. Not the chart. Not God himself. You hear me? Yes, boss. He looked down at the woman in his arms, then at the 2 small children watching him with eyes that were unmistakably his own. We're going. Stay close. Don't let go of each other. Rose nodded once, like a soldier. Lily slipped her bloodied hand into Dominic Castellano's, and the man who ran half of New York stopped breathing for the 2nd time that night. St. Catherine's at 4 in the morning was a different hospital than the one civilians knew. The private wing on the 7th floor had been quietly funded by the Castellano family for 2 decades. No intake desk, no insurance forms, no questions. Dr. Elena Reyes, 58 years old, and the only physician Dominic trusted with anything that mattered, was waiting at the elevator when the doors opened. Marco had cleared the entire corridor. Bleeding's heavy, Reyes said, already moving as Dominic transferred Mia onto the gurney. Pulse is 42. BP is bottoming out. Talk to me, what do I know about her? 28. C-section scar, 6 years old. Twins. Probably hasn't slept in a year. Reyes looked up sharply. Twins? In the waiting room. She didn't ask the second question. Reyes had been Castellano's doctor long enough to know when not to. The gurney disappeared behind double doors. Dominic was left in a hallway that smelled like antiseptic and old money, his black suit jacket dark with someone else's blood. He looked down at his hands. They were finally shaking. 20 minutes. 40. An hour. When Reyes came out, she pulled the surgical mask off her face and lowered her voice. Uterine hemorrhage. The old C-section scar tore from the inside out. We've stopped the bleeding for now. She's severely anemic, dangerously underweight, and her cortisol levels are the worst I've ever read on a living patient. Reyes hesitated. Dominic, this woman has been working herself to death. Her body has been carrying something for years that should have broken her a long time ago. He couldn't make his throat work. She needs blood. AB negative. We're light tonight. Dominic was already pulling off his jacket and rolling up his sleeve. Take mine. We're the same. Reyes paused, looked at him, looked at the closed door of the waiting room down the hall, where two small E's were sitting. The mathematics of that match AB negative. Less than 1% of the population passed wordlessly between them. Right this way, she said quietly. He sat in the waiting room afterward with a cotton ball taped to the inside of his elbow, and a Castellano daughter pressed against either side of him. Lily had pulled a worn paperback from the small backpack she had thought to grab on their way out the door. Charlotte's Web. The cover was held together with clear tape. The pages had been softened by 1,000 readings. "Mommy reads this to us every night," Lily said. "She does the voices. The pig has a squeaky one." Dominic looked at the book in her small hands and felt something fracture quietly behind his ribs. Rose, on his other side, had not opened a book. She had been studying him. Her gray-blue eyes had not left his face since they sat down. "Mr. Dominic," she said, and her voice had that flat clarity again, the one that did not belong in a 6-year-old. "I want to ask something true." "Go ahead, sweetheart." Mommy keeps a red shoebox in the back of her closet, behind the winter coats. Dominic's heartbeat slowed. "There are pictures in it. You and her. Boston. There's a coffee shop with green chairs, and a place with stone steps. There's also 2 tickets. Opera tickets. They say the Opera La Bohème, 2018. I think she didn't go." The breath went out of him soundlessly. The Opera La Bohème. Their last date. He had bought those tickets 6 weeks in advance. She had vanished from his life 4 days before the curtain. He had spent that night in his seat, staring at an empty chair beside him for 3 full acts. Lily reached into the front pocket of her unicorn pajamas. She pulled something out and placed it carefully in his palm. A small silver chain, a small silver cross. The Castellano cross, the one his grandmother had pressed into his hand on her deathbed and made him promise to give to the only woman he ever loved. He had given it to Mia on a rainy Tuesday in March, on their first anniversary, in a tiny apartment over a bakery in Cambridge. "Mommy wears it under her shirt," Lily said softly. "She never takes it off. She told us it's the only thing she kept from our daddy." Dominic closed his fingers around the cross. It was warm from her chest, from 7 years against her skin. Rose's voice, when it came, was very quiet, and it cut him cleaner than any blade had ever come close to. "Mr. Dominic, why did Mommy have to hide you? Why does she cry when she hears your voice? Why did me and Lily have to grow up without a daddy?" For the first time in his adult life, Dominic Castellano, boss, killer, king of half a borough, opened his mouth, and no answer came out. By 5 in the morning, both girls had given up on staying awake. Lily had folded against his right side first, Charlotte's Web still open in her lap. Rose held out longer, her chin tipping forward, snapping back up, tipping forward again until exhaustion finally won. She slumped against his left arm with a small sigh, one fist still curled tight around the silver cross her sister had handed him an hour earlier. Dominic Castellano sat very still. He was afraid, for the first time in his adult life, of waking children. The waiting room was empty except for them. The hum of fluorescent lights, the distant beep of a monitor down the corridor. His suit jacket was a ruin of dried blood. His left forearm was sore from the needle, and against either shoulder, 2 small breaths rose and fell. He took out his phone with the hand that wasn't trapped beneath Lily's cheek. Tony. His consigliere picked up on the first ring. Tony Russo did not sleep when his boss did not sleep. "I need everything on Amelia Hartley. Last 7 years. Every dollar she earned, every place she slept, every prescription she filled, every emergency room she walked into. I want it before sunrise." "Boss?" A pause. "How deep?" "To the bone." He hung up. The first message arrived 16 minutes later. Then another. Then another. Each ping of the phone landed in his chest like a separate small bullet. Premature labor. 32 weeks. Boston General, Public Ward, March 12, 2019. No emergency contact listed. Withdrew from Tufts School of Medicine, 4th year. Transferred to Accelerated Nursing Program. Completed in 19 months. Mount Sinai Pediatric Ward. 2 to 3 shifts per day. No partner on file. No boyfriend. No co-signer. Mother Margaret Hartley, early onset Alzheimer's. Long-term care covered by daughter. Passed away 13 months ago. 3 documented hospitalizations for exhaustion and acute anemia. The most recent was 11 weeks ago. She discharged herself against medical advice. Both times before that as well. Dominic read each message twice, then a third time. She had carried his children alone in a public maternity ward. She had given up her medical degree, the one she had cried over the night she got accepted. The one he had taken her to dinner for so she could be a nurse in 19 months instead of a doctor in 5 years. She had worked herself into the ground 3 times and walked back out of the hospital each time because nobody else was going to feed his daughters, and she had done all of it alone. The screen of his phone cracked under his thumb before he realized he was squeezing it. A nurse appeared in the doorway. Castellano staff. She kept her voice very low. "Mr. Castellano, she's awake. She's asking for the girls." Dominic looked down at the 2 small heads resting against him. He shifted gently, easing Rose forward, lifting Lily's book from her lap. He woke them with a hand on each small shoulder and a quiet word. "Your mom is awake. Go to her first. Let her see you. Let her know you're safe." Rose blinked up at him through sleep. "Aren't you coming?" "In a minute." "Sweetheart, she needs you first." The girls ran, bare feet on hospital tile. He watched them disappear through the door of the room at the end of the hall. He did not follow. He stood at the wide observation window outside her room instead, and watched, through the glass, the moment the 3 of them collided. Mia, propped against pillows, an IV in one arm, color barely returning to her lips, the way her face broke open when her daughters reached the bed, the way she gathered them too thin, too pale, but gathering them into her arms like a woman who had spent every shift, every double, every hour of overtime, pulling herself back to this exact bed for this exact reason. The 3 of them cried together, and Dominic Castellano stood on the wrong side of a pane of glass and felt, for the first time in his life, like a stranger in his own story. Then she looked up, past her daughters, through the window, straight into his eyes. 7 years collapsed in a single look. He saw her recognize him. He saw the second after the dawning horror, the slow draining of what little color she had left. Through the glass, he saw her lips move. 2 girls turned their heads toward the door. Babies. Her voice was paper thin, but he could read it on her mouth. Who did you call?" Rose's voice, bright and innocent and devastating, carried clear through the door. "The number you wrote in red. Mommy. He came. He said he's our daddy." He had not said that. He had never said that. But the children had decided, and Mia's face went the color of the sheets beneath her, and her eyes rolled back, and the monitor at her bedside began to scream. Dominic was through the door before the alarm finished its first cycle. She came back to consciousness a little after noon. The light through the slatted blinds had gone gold and adult by then, the kind of light that belonged to people who slept through the night. Mia's eyes opened slowly, taking in a ceiling she did not know, a private room she could not afford, and sitting in a chair pulled close to the bed a man she had spent 7 years trying not to think about. Dominic had taken off his ruined jacket. His sleeves were rolled to the elbow. His black tie hung loose around an unbuttoned collar. The cotton ball on his arm was now a small bandage. He looked exactly like she remembered, and nothing like she remembered, and her body remembered him before her mind caught up. The monitor beside her began to climb again. He watched the numbers rise. He didn't move. "Where are my girls?" Her voice was sandpaper. "Downstairs. Marco took them for pizza. They were starving, and I didn't want them to see you wake up before the color came back." She turned her face toward the window. "You aren't allowed to be here." The corner of his mouth pulled, not into a smile. "You weren't allowed to keep my children from me for 6 years, he said softly. "And yet here we are. They are not your children." Her voice cracked on the last word. "They are mine." Without looking away from her, he reached into his shirt pocket and laid a folded sheet of hospital paper on the rolling tray beside the bed. "AB negative, he said. "Both of us. Less than 1% of the population. The girls match. They had to. Don't lie to me, Mia. Not anymore." Tears slid sideways into her hair before she had given them permission. "Why did you come?" she whispered. "To take them? Is that what this is? You finally have what your mother always wanted you to have. An heir. 2 of them, so now you'll just... What kind of man do you think I am?" His voice broke at the edge of it. "You think I would tear them out of their mother's arms? You think that's what I came here to do? I think you're Dominic Castellano." She turned her head back toward him, and her eyes were not crying anymore. They were burning. "I think you run half this city. I think you have lawyers who eat women like me for breakfast. And I think your mother once stood in a marble bathroom in front of me and told me, very clearly, that I was not the kind of woman who got to bear children for the Castellano family." The room went absolutely still. The color drained from his face the same way it had drained from hers an hour ago. "My mother." His voice was very soft. "What did my mother say to you, Mia?" She turned her face away again. "Ask her. Or don't. I stopped caring a long time ago. You know now. You've seen them. They're alive. I'm alive. Now please, please, let us go home." "No." The word landed between them like a closing door. He leaned forward in the chair. His hands were braced on his knees, and they were shaking, and he didn't try to hide it. "You can hate me, Mia. You can hate me until the day you die. That's your right. I earned it, somehow, even if I don't yet know how. But I will not disappear from those girls' lives. Not for one more night, not for one more hour, not ever again." She closed her eyes. "You don't even know them. Then let me know them." Small footsteps came pounding down the hallway before she could answer. The door burst open. Lily reached the bed first in 3 running strides, and launched herself onto the mattress with the boneless trust of a child who had not yet learned that beds were fragile. She wrapped both arms around her mother's neck and burrowed in. Rose stopped exactly between the chair and the bed. She put one small hand on Dominic's knee, the other she held up toward her mother in a stop gesture she had clearly seen on a crossing guard. "You two." Her voice was very serious. "Stop fighting. Mommy just got better." Nobody moved. Lily's voice, muffled against Mia's collarbone. "He saved you, Mommy. He drove really fast. He gave you his blood. He has the same eyes as us." Mia's hand came up, slowly, and settled on her daughter's tangled hair. She looked at Dominic over the top of Lily's head. He looked back at her, and in that long, silent moment, a 6-year-old standing between them as a tiny, barefoot referee, Dominic Castellano understood, with an awful and exact clarity, just how much he had already lost. The fragile silence in the room held for almost an hour before someone destroyed it. Mia had finally drifted into a thin, painkiller soft sleep with Lily curled against her ribs. Rose had migrated to the rug at the foot of the bed, and was building a small tower out of the puzzle pieces a nurse had dug up from a cabinet. Dominic sat in the chair and watched all 3 of them breathe. He did not hear the heels coming until they were already at the door. The door did not open. It was thrown open. Vivienne Marchetti walked into the private suite of St. Catherine's Hospital like a woman entering a ballroom she had personally booked. Black Chanel, knee-length and tailored to a millimeter, hair scraped into a high chignon, lipstick the exact red of a fresh wound. In her gloved hand she carried a bouquet of white lilies, hothouse grown and obscenely expensive, and the irony of the flower choice landed in Dominic's chest like a slap before she had even finished her opening line. "Dominic, my love." Her voice was warm, honey poured over broken glass. "I heard you've been at the hospital all night." I was worried. Her eyes had already swept the room. She catalogued Mia in the bed, pale, ivy tethered, asleep. The little girl tucked against her, the other one frozen on the rug with a yellow puzzle piece in her hand. And then, slowly, she lifted her gaze to the man who had not stood up to greet her. Her smile sharpened. "Oh," a small, melodious laugh. "Is this your patient? How tender of you." Personally bedside sitting for a stranger, Lily's eyes opened against her mother's collarbone. She did not move from the bed, but her small voice came out perfectly clear. "My mommy is not a stranger. She's my mommy." Rose set down the puzzle piece. "And Mr. Dominic is on? Old friend of your mother's." Dominic cut in smoothly, before the 6-year-old could finish a sentence that would set the room on fire. Rose looked at him for a long moment. Then she looked at Vivienne. Then she went back to her tower without saying anything else, which in some ways was worse. Vivienne's smile did not move, but something behind her eyes did. "Could I borrow you for a moment, darling?" He followed her into the corridor. He pulled the door of the suite halfway closed behind him so the girls would not hear, but not all the way, because he no longer trusted himself to leave them on the other side of any door. Vivienne wheeled on him the moment they were 3 steps down the hall. "The wedding is in 91 days, Dominic. The Times has already run the engagement photo. The bishop has been confirmed. My father is sitting in his study right now waiting for confirmation that the Marchetti-Castellano alliance is going to hold. You cannot afford to be photographed playing house with some little nurse and her 2 Vivienne." His voice dropped to a register she had never heard from him. "You do not have permission to interfere in my private affairs." "Your private affairs." She laughed, and it was an ugly sound now. "Your private affairs became mine the day your father and mine signed the blood contract last spring. Or did you somehow forget that?" He did not answer. She tilted her head. The smile came back, smaller and crueler. She turned, very deliberately, and walked back to the partly open door of the suite. She leaned a single-gloved hand against the frame and looked in. Mia had woken. Her arms tightened around both daughters. "Get well soon, sweetheart," Vivienne said sweetly. "I do hope you don't linger here too long." Mia did not answer. She gathered her girls closer to her ribs. Vivienne turned on a stiletto and clicked away down the corridor without looking at Dominic again. He stood in the hallway for a moment, breathing. Then, at the far end of the corridor, the elevator doors slid open with a soft chime. Constance Castellano stepped out. She was 62 and silver-haired and immaculate in pearl gray, ebony cane in her right hand. The cane she had carried since the bullet that had taken her husband had also clipped her hip. She was halfway down the hall before she saw the open door, before she saw what was inside it. 2 small girls, identical, dark hair tangled, looking up at the visitor in the doorway with wide, gray-blue eyes ringed in black. Castellano eyes. The cane slipped from Constance's hand and clattered to the linoleum. The sound carried down the entire corridor. Constance Castellano did not move for a full 30 seconds. She stood in the middle of the corridor with her cane on the floor at her feet, one gloved hand pressed flat against her own chest, and stared through the open door at 2 small girls who had her son's eyes. "Oh my God," she whispered. The Italian came out the way it always came out of her, only when something had cracked too deep for English. Those are my grandchildren?" Dominic was already moving. He bent, scooped up her cane, and took her elbow with a gentleness he reserved for exactly 2 people in this world. One of them was the woman in the bed behind that door. The other had just dropped her cane. "Not here, Mama," he said quietly. "Upstairs. Now." He guided her past the suite without letting her look in again. Marco was already at the suite door, blocking the view, his hand near his hip. 2 more men appeared at the elevator banks. They rode up to the 11th floor in silence, to the small private office the family kept on the top of St. Catherine's, the one with no windows and a soundproof door. He closed the door. He set her cane carefully against the desk. He did not sit. "Was it her?" Constance asked. Her voice was steadier than the rest of her. "The Hartley girl, the one from Boston." He went very still. "Mama, I haven't said her name out loud in this family for 7 years. I haven't said her name out loud at all. How do you remember it?" A single bead of sweat broke at her hairline. She did not lift a hand to wipe it. "Dominic, Mama." His voice dropped to the register he used in basements and back rooms. "What did you do?" "I did what was right for the family." He did not move. The silence stretched. "She was not suitable, Dominic. Her mother was a high school librarian. Her father was I have 2 6-year-old daughters downstairs that I have never met." His fist hit the desk so hard the ink pen rolled off the edge. She flinched. She actually flinched. Constance Castellano, who had stood at her husband's grave with dry eyes while 3 rival capos watched, who had once held a beretta to a federal informant's temple in her own kitchen, flinched. He had never raised his voice to her, not once in 37 years. "I didn't know," she said. The words came out fast, brittle, almost falling over each other. "Dominic, I swear on your father's soul, I did not know she was pregnant. I would never, never." "What did you say to her, Mama?" The exact words. She lowered herself slowly into the chair behind the desk, as if the bones in her legs had stopped agreeing to hold her up. It was the night of the 30th anniversary gala, the penthouse on 5th. "You were in the ballroom, dancing with the Bonacci girl because I asked you to, because the cameras were there. I followed her into the ladies' lounge. I had a check ready, 500,000. I told her she had until morning to disappear from your life. I told her it would be the kindest thing she could ever do for you." He was breathing through his teeth. "Keep going." She refused. She actually refused. "She told me she loved you." She said it like a child says it. Dominic, like she still believed love was a reason. "So she stopped. Say it. I told her I knew where her mother lived. I told her I knew which medications the woman was already starting to need. I told her that if she stayed, something would happen to that old woman, and no one would ever be able to prove it was me." His jaw locked. Margaret Hartley had early-stage Alzheimer's at the time. "Mama." Mia had no money, no siblings, no father, no one else to care for her mother. "You knew that. That's why you picked it." "I did not know about the babies. Would it have mattered?" She did not answer. He reached into his shoulder holster. He drew the pistol slow, deliberate. He laid it flat on the desk between them, barrel pointed at the wall, not at her. He never would have pointed it at her, but he wanted her to see it. "You threatened the only family I have ever loved," he said, "and you stole 7 years of my children's lives. From me, from them, from their mother." Constance Castellano, who had not cried since the morning a Bronx priest had told her she was a widow at 31, put her face into her hands, and the female boss of the Castellano family wept. "I thought," she whispered through her fingers, "I thought I was protecting you, Dominic. Oh my God, I thought I was protecting you." He came back down to her room a little after midnight. The corridor lights had been dimmed. Marco was outside the door with a paper cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. Inside, the girls had finally been moved to the small adjoining room, and Mia was alone in the half-dark, the morphine drip making her face look younger than it should have at 28. Dominic sat in the chair by her bed and did not turn on a light. He picked up her hand. The one without the IV. He held it the way he had once held her hand in a quiet booth at a restaurant in Boston's North End, the night he had first told her he loved her. Both of his hands closed around hers, like he was trying to keep her warm from something only he could see coming. She slept for 2 more hours. He did not move. A little after 2 in the morning, her fingers tightened against his. She opened her eyes. She saw him there. She saw his hand around hers. She did not pull away. "Mia," his voice was rough at the edges. "I need you to tell me, all of it. Everything she did. I need to understand." She looked at the ceiling for a long time before she spoke. "It wasn't only the check, Dominic." He did not interrupt. "After I told her no," she said, her voice paper-thin and steady, the way only deeply tired people are steady. She opened a folder on the marble counter. She slid a photograph across to me. My mother, in a wheelchair, at a long-term care facility I had not yet been able to afford to put her in. She wasn't there yet, Dom. She would have been there about 4 months later. The photograph hadn't been taken yet. It was a projection, a staged one, with a caption, "In your mother's handwriting. I know where she is. I know what medications she needs." His hand tightened around hers without him meaning to. "That's when I knew," Mia whispered. "Not the money, not the wedding talk. The fact that she had already decided what she was going to do to my mother if I stayed. Go on." And then she said these are her exact words. "Dom, I have replayed them in my head every night for 7 years," she said. "Do you know how the wives of Mafia bosses die? I've buried 3 of them. Would you like to be the 4th? He closed his eyes. "I went home," she said. "Back to our apartment. I was going to tell you. I swear to God I was going to tell you. I had my coat off and my keys still in my hand when you came in the door." A long pause. "With a bullet in your shoulder." He didn't say anything. He remembered the night. He had told her it was nothing. "Some internal cleaning, you said." "It's already handled, baby. It's already over. And I sat on the bathroom counter and I held the gauze for you and I realized, very calmly, that this world was actually going to kill me. And anything I had inside me. The next morning I bought a pharmacy test on my walk to the T. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped it 3 times before I could get it out of the box. You didn't tell me." "No. Why?" The tears finally came, slow and quiet down the side of her face into her hair. 3 reasons. I have spent 7 years being honest with myself about each one. The first, if I told you, you would have put me somewhere safe. A house upstate, a villa in Calabria. Somewhere. And our children would have grown up exactly where I grew up watching you grow up. Inside the circle. Inside the violence. I could not, Dom. I could not let that be their first inheritance. She drew a breath. The second. Your mother had already shown me the photograph of mine. If she had even suspected I was pregnant, I do not believe my mother would have lived to her next birthday. I do not believe the babies would have either. His thumb stroked the back of her hand. He could not speak. And the third. Her voice broke. The third is the one I'm most ashamed of. I knew that if I looked you in the eyes and told you I was pregnant, I would not have been able to leave. I loved you too much to say no to you, Dominic. Even with my mother's life on a counter. Even with our children inside me. The only way I could keep them alive was to not let myself look at you ever again. She turned her face toward him at last, her eyes shining wet in the dark. I'm not strong, Dom. I'm not the woman in the stories. I was just scared. I ran because running was the only thing I could do that kept them breathing. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't trust you to be strong enough to protect us. Dominic Castellano lowered his forehead to the back of her hand. He had not cried since he was 17 years old, the morning his father did not come home. He cried now, silently, against her knuckles, for a very long time. When he could finally find his voice again, it was nothing like the voice that ran half a city. "No, Mia," he whispered into her skin. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't build a world safe enough for you to trust me in." The Hartley twins had been holding emergency meetings in bathrooms since they were 4 years old. Their mother had taught them this herself. By accident, every time the rent was late, every time a shift ran long, Mia had pulled them into the small hallway bathroom of their Bushwick apartment and explained, in calm sentence, what the next 48 hours would look like. So when the morning sun came up over the East River, and the painkillers had finally let their mother sleep without crying, Lily and Rose did what they had always done. They went into the small private bathroom of the hospital suite, locked the door from the inside, and sat down on the cold tile to whisper. 20 minutes later they came out. Lily was carrying a small spiral notebook with a unicorn on the cover. Rose was carrying the agenda. Marco, posted outside the suite, watched two 6-year-olds in unicorn pajamas march past him with the focused gait of small federal agents, and didn't even try to stop them. They took the elevator to the 11th floor. They knocked on the office door at the end of the hall. 3 precise knocks. Dominic opened it. He had not slept. His shirt sleeves were still rolled to the elbow, his collar still open, his eyes still red-rimmed from the dark. Rose looked up at him, very serious. "Mr. Dominic, we have some questions. Your answers are going to decide a lot of things." He stepped aside. He pulled the chair out from his own desk for them, the way a man would for a client. Lily climbed into it and opened the unicorn notebook on her lap. Rose stayed standing. The agenda always stood. Lily smoothed the page with one small palm. The handwriting was Rose's block letters, tilting forward, only one word misspelled. Question 1. Rose's voice was steady. "Do you love our mommy?" He answered before she had finished asking. "Yes, for 7 years. I never stopped." Lily made a small, careful check mark next to the question. Question 2. "Are you brave enough to give up the dangerous parts of your job for us?" The pause this time was longer. He owed them honesty, and honesty took a moment to find. "I can't make all of it disappear overnight, Rose. I won't lie to you, but I will change it. I will put walls around the 3 of you that nothing in my world can get through. I will stop being a man whose children have to be afraid of his phone. That I can promise." Lily considered, then made another checkmark. The 3rd question was Lily's. She lifted her face from the notebook for it. Her voice was very small. "Do you promise to never make our mommy cry again?" He went down on one knee in front of the desk so his face was level with hers. "I promise," he said quietly. "On my life. On every breath I have left." Lily made the 3rd checkmark very carefully. She closed the notebook. She handed it to Rose, who tucked it under her arm with the air of a senator filing a vote. "Okay," Rose said. "Then we give you permission to be our daddy." He pulled them both into his chest before he had decided to do it, and the man who ran half of New York held 2 6-year-olds in unicorn pajamas in a soundproofed office and didn't try to hide what was happening to his face. After a moment, he reached past them for his phone and dialed. "Marco, cancel the wedding. Today." The line went silent for 2 full seconds. "Boss." Marco's voice had gone very careful. "The Marchetti contract the blood compact, you understand what that I'll handle it. Today, Marco." He ended the call. Rose was already moving on. "Do you have a dog?" "His name is Bruno. He weighs more than both of you combined, and he snores." "Do you really have a garage with a lot of cars?" "A few. I want to drive a Maserati when I grow up." Lily folded her arms. "I'd rather have books. Cars are loud." Dominic actually laughed. It startled him. It startled the room. "When you turn 16, Rose, you will have your own. I'll teach you myself." Lily gravely. "Mommy is not going to like that." All 3 of them laughed for the first time since 3:17 inches the morning. Outside the door, in the corridor, Mia stood with her IV pole and her hospital gown pulled around her like a coat. She had walked the 11 floors up out of stubbornness and bare feet on cold tile. Her hand rested flat against the wood of the door. She did not turn the handle. She just listened to her daughter's laugh on the other side and let herself, finally, cry quietly into the sleeve of her own arm. 3 days later, Mia was wheeled out of St. Catherine's through the staff entrance and into the back of an armored Mercedes she had not asked to ride in. Dominic took them to the Long Island estate. He did not give her a choice in this. Exactly, he gave her the choice of which safe place, and let her pick between a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights with 3 guards on every door and a house surrounded by 10 acres of cleared sightlines and a saltwater view. She picked the water. She told the girls it was a vacation. She had been there 4 days when the gates opened without permission. Marco's voice came through Dominic's earpiece in the study. "Boss, Marchetti convoy. Father and daughter. Front door. They're not asking." Dominic was already moving. He met them in the marble foyer. Salvatore Marchetti was 55 and built like a man who had buried a lot of things personally. Iron gray hair, a black overcoat. He did not raise his voice when he was angry, which was the most dangerous thing about him. "Castellano," he said, almost gently. "You broke a blood compact. You understand what that means." "I'll double the compensation," Dominic answered, just as flat. "I'll restructure the doc contracts in your favor for 10 years. I'll do whatever the family books require. The wedding does not happen." That was when Vivian lost her composure for the first time in her adult life. Because of her voice climbed in a way it had not been trained to climb. Because of that cheap nurse and her too, the word she used was the worst word a woman of her station could have reached for. It cracked through the foyer like a thrown plate. From the curve of the staircase came a small intake of breath. Mia was halfway down the stairs in a borrowed sweater and bare feet, one hand on the railing, the other behind her, sheltering Lily on one side and Rose on the other, the girls tucked against the back of her legs. Dominic did not turn his head to look at her. He drew his sidearm, not raised, not aimed, held against his thigh with the safety off, in the precise way that meant he was making a single, surgical promise. Vivienne. His voice was perfectly level. If you call my wife or my children that name in this house one more time, I will not need a blood compact to settle it. The word wife landed in the marble like a coin dropped on a steel tray. Mia, on the stairs, made a sound like a small, swallowed gasp. Salvatore was, to his credit, the only one in the room who did not move. He took his daughter's elbow with the same deliberate calm he had walked in with. "This is not finished, Castellano," he said. He did not look at Mia. He did not look at the girls. He turned and steered Vivienne out the way they had come. The Mercedes engines were still warm in the driveway when they pulled away. It was finished by midnight. Vivienne did not need her father for the next part. She had her own people. By 2 a.m, the first headline broke on a tabloid site that paid in cash. Mafia prince's secret twins' wedding of the decade collapses over nurses' love children by 6 a.m. A long-lens paparazzi shot of Mia in the garden with both girls in matching sweaters had sold to 7 outlets. By breakfast, the drone footage was on cable. Mia stared at the television in the morning room with her hand pressed flat over her mouth. "They're never going to have a normal childhood," she whispered. "They're never going to walk into a kindergarten without a security detail. They're never Mia. They're going to grow up being his daughters in the public eye for the rest of their Mia." Dominic's hands closed over her shoulders, gentle. "I will sue every outlet that printed a frame of those girls. I will buy the magazines that don't take it down. I will make their faces unsearchable. Do you hear me?" Tears were falling without her permission now. Her voice broke. "This is what I was scared of, Dom. This is exactly why I ran." She walked away from him, up the stairs, and he let her go because he didn't know what else to do. That night, very quietly, Mia took down the small duffel bag she had kept under the guest room bed since the day they arrived. She started folding the girls' clothes the way she always had, small, fast, practiced the muscle memory of every middle-of-the-night exit she had ever made. The door creaked. Lily was standing in the doorway in her unicorn pajamas. Her bare feet were silent on the rug. She was clutching Charlotte's web against her chest. She looked at the duffel bag. She looked at her mother's hands. Her face crumpled in slow motion. "Mommy," she whispered. "Mommy, please." "Not this time. Please don't go this time." Mia sank to her knees on the rug. The folded shirt fell out of her hands. Lily walked across the room with the unbearable seriousness of a 6-year-old who had already, twice in her short life, watched her mother almost disappear, and put both small arms around Mia's neck. Mia held her daughter very tightly and understood. Finally, that running was no longer something her body was permitted to do. Her children had already chosen. A week after the tabloids broke, Mia spiked a fever. Dr. Reyes came out, listened to her chest, told Dominic the wound from the surgery was clean, but the body underneath it was still a body that had spent 6 years surviving on no sleep and bad food, and that fevers were going to keep happening for a while. Bed rest, fluids, quiet. Quiet was the one thing the Castellano estate had in abundance. Dominic was downstairs on a call with the lawyers about the Marchetti compensation when Constance arrived at the gate. She did not call ahead. She handed the driver her own coat, climbed the front steps with her ebony cane, and let Marco wave her through without ceremony. She had not asked her son's permission. She did not ask Mia's, either. She was here as a grandmother, for the first time in her life, and she was not going to be polite about it. She found the room by following the sound of small voices. The door was half open. She did not knock. She just looked. Mia lay flat on the wide guest bed, hair damp at the temples, eyes closed. On either side of her, kneeling on the mattress in the tidy stillness of children who had been doing this for years, were her granddaughters. Rose held a folded washcloth in a steel bowl of cool water. She wrung it out with both small hands, the way a nurse would, then handed it to Lily. Lily smoothed it across her mother's forehead, with a focus Constance had previously only seen on cardiac surgeons. The bowl had been refilled 3 times. Constance could tell by the line of damp on the rug. She had spent her entire adult life in rooms where children were performances, bows on Christmas Eve, recitations at the dinner table, hands folded on laps for visitors. She had never, in 62 years, watched a child do something for the simple reason that her mother needed it done. Rose looked up at the sound of breath in the doorway. She did not recognize the woman in pearl gray. She only saw an adult. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said politely. Could you please get me some more cool water? Mommy's fever is still really high. Constance Castellano, who had not been asked for anything by anyone in 3 decades that she had not already given an order to fulfill, opened her mouth and could not speak. Then she said, "Yes, sweetheart." She walked the bowl to the ensuite herself. She wrung out a fresh cloth with hands that were trembling so hard the water beaded down her own wrist. She walked back. She handed the bowl to Rose. She did not sit down, because she had not been invited to. That was when Lily tilted her head and looked at her, really looked at her, and her face went still. "You're our grandmother," Lily said quietly. "Aren't you?" Constance could only nod. She braced for it. The recoil, the accusation, whatever this child had been told, it did not come. "Mommy says our grandma is very strong," Lily said, very seriously. "She says our grandma could protect a whole family if she wanted to." Constance's hand found the bedpost. In 7 years, Mia Hartley had not poisoned her daughters against her. Mia, whose mother had been threatened, whose entire life had been broken by the woman now standing at the foot of this bed, had told her children that their grandmother was strong. The bones in Constance's legs forgot how to work. She lowered herself, with what was left of her dignity, into the chair beside the bed. Mia stirred at the new presence. Her eyes opened, foggy. She tried to push herself up onto her elbows. "Stay," Constance said, very soft. The single word came out almost like a prayer. "Stay down. You are still weak." Mia's eyes were on her face now, tired, but unflinching. Constance folded her hands in her lap. "I did a great wrong 7 years ago," she said. "I am not going to ask you to forgive me. I have not earned that, and I do not believe I will earn it in whatever years I have left. I am only asking for the chance to know my grandchildren." Mia waited a long time before she answered. "You can know them," she said, voice thin but absolutely steady. "But if you hurt them, Constance, once, in any way, even with words, I will not show you the mercy you did not show me." Constance Castellano had not been spoken to like that by another woman since she was 19 years old. She nodded slowly, like a soldier accepting terms. "Understood," she whispered. Then, quieter, more to herself than to anyone, "You did what I once did. You know, I raised Dominic alone too, after they shot Antonio. I understand what it costs. I only wish I had understood it the night I made you choose." For a long moment, neither woman spoke. Then Mia lifted one weak hand, palm up, on the bedspread. Constance Castellano looked at it, and after a moment, with the trembling hand of a 62-year-old woman who had not held another woman's hand for kindness in over 30 years, she covered it gently with her own. 2 girls watched, eyes wide, and did not say anything at all. Mia's first follow-up appointment was scheduled for 2 weeks after she came home. Dr. Reyes saw her personally, blood work, vitals, sutures from the inside healing the way they were supposed to. Reyes wrote out the next prescription regimen herself, in her own slanted hand, and signed it, "Iron supplements. A low-dose blood thinner to keep clots from forming around the surgical site. Nothing exotic, nothing dangerous, if dosed correctly." Mia took the bottle from the in-house pharmacist on the ground floor of St. Catherine's the same afternoon, walked it back through the marble lobby, and never thought about it again. Vivienne Marchetti had thought about almost nothing else for 9 days. She did not need her father for the next move. She had her own money. She found Dr. Aaron Cohen, a 34-year-old internist on Reyes's team, 3 years out of residency, drowning in his second mortgage and a divorce that was eating him alive. She met him once. She offered $200,000 in unmarked cash. She wanted 1 prescription altered, Mia Hartley's anticoagulant, 5 times the prescribed dose, slipped through the in-house pharmacy with a duplicate barcode Cohen could authorize as the on-call physician. Cohen took the money on a Tuesday. By Friday, Mia had taken her first altered pill. By the following Monday, she was bleeding from places she shouldn't have been. It started small. A nosebleed in the kitchen that took 20 minutes to stop. A bruise the size of a dollar bill on her forearm, with no memory of bumping anything. Then the dizziness. Standing up from the breakfast table and having to grip the back of a chair until the room realigned. She told herself it was the recovery. She told herself it was the fevers coming back. Lily told her otherwise. Lily had been 6 years old for 9 months and could already read at the level of a 4th grader. And she had been reading every nursing reference book in their old apartment since she was 5, the way other children read picture books. She watched her mother's 3rd nosebleed of the day from across the living room with very still eyes. Then she went upstairs. She came back down with one of Mia's old textbooks under one arm, a worn paperback labeled hematology for nursing practice, and a sticky note marking page 84. She did not show it to her mother. She walked it straight into Dominic's study without knocking. "Daddy," she said, and it was the second time she had used the word, and it stopped him in the middle of a sentence to a lawyer in California. "I think Mommy's medicine is wrong." Dominic was on the phone with Reyes within 90 seconds. Reyes pulled the prescription record up while he was still on the line. He heard the sound of her sharp intake of breath through the receiver. "This is not my script, Dominic. The dose is wrong. The signature is mine, and the handwriting is mine, and this is not my script. Someone got into my pharmacy queue. Find them." Already pulling the access logs. The pharmacy logs took 4 hours to crack open. Cohen's badge had been used at 6:42 p.m. On a Friday, Cohen had not been on duty. Marco had a quiet conversation with Dr. Cohen on a quiet street in Murray Hill that same night. He did not lay a finger on him. He did not have to. Cohen confessed to everything before Marco had finished the sentence about the $200,000. Vivienne Marchetti, the cash, the duplicate code, the exact dose. Dominic did not have Cohen killed. He did something he had decided, in the past 3 weeks, was crueler. He let the lawyers eat him alive. The medical board revoked Cohen's license inside 72 hours. The civil suit followed by the end of the week. Cohen would not write another prescription anywhere in the United States in this lifetime. The conversation with Vivienne, Dominic had in person. He drove to the Marchetti estate himself. He went unarmed, because he wanted her to understand that he would not need a weapon for what was coming next. He found her in the conservatory. She was arranging white lilies. "Vivienne." His voice was perfectly flat. "The next time you put your hands on my family, I will not be solving the problem in a courtroom." She laughed. There was something cracked in the sound. "You think I'm afraid of you, Dominic? My father will protect me. You broke our engagement. You did not just insult me. You declared war on the entire Marchetti family." He looked at her for a long moment. "Then we have a war." He drove back to Long Island with his hands very steady on the wheel. 20 minutes from the gate, he picked up the secure phone. "Mia, listen to me carefully. You and the girls do not leave the estate until I tell you it is safe. Not the garden gate, not the beach path, nowhere. Dom, what's happening? I will tell you everything. I promise. But not yet. Right now I need you to do something 7 years ago you couldn't. And I do not have the right to ask, but I'm asking anyway." He breathed once. "Trust me, just this once." There was a long pause on the other end. She could hear, in his voice, the man she had run from at 21. She could also hear the man kneeling on the bathroom floor of her apartment in Bushwick with their daughter's hand in his. "I trust you, Dom," she said quietly, and meant it. 2 weeks of staying inside the estate's walls did not feel like a punishment until the seasons turned. The wind came in off the Sound on a Sunday night with the first real cold of the year, and by Tuesday morning, Lily was burning at 104 degrees, with both small hands pressed flat against her chest. The pediatrician confirmed it through a stethoscope. Pneumonia, both lower lobes. Not unusual in a child whose immune system had spent 6 years living on instant noodles and rotating bus stops, but unusual enough at this fever to take seriously. IV antibiotics, round-the-clock monitoring, a nurse on the property at all times. Mia did not let the nurse near her. She sat by Lily's bed for 3 nights in a row. She drank cold coffee. She changed cool washcloths the way her own daughters had changed cool washcloths for her 2 weeks earlier. Small, careful, expert hands repeating themselves in a different generation. By the 3rd night, she was hallucinating shadows in the corner of the room, and her own surgical scar was pulling tight again under her shirt. Dominic stood in the doorway just before dawn on the 4th night and watched her sway in the chair. "Mia, I'm fine. You will not be fine in another 6 hours. Go to bed. Dom, I am her father." His voice was very gentle. He had practiced gentleness for 2 weeks now. "I have the right to take a turn." She looked up at him. Her eyes were red. She was holding a damp washcloth in a fist that was shaking. For the first time in 6 years, Mia Hartley let go of her daughter's bedside. Dominic took the chair. He picked up the book that was face down on the nightstand, Charlotte's Web, the same battered paperback held together with tape, and opened it to the page Lily had marked with a folded gum wrapper. He had never read a children's book aloud in his life. He stumbled over Wilbur's voice. He could not find the squeaky one Mia did. He read in the same low, careful register he used to read contracts, and at the bottom of the page he had to clear his throat twice. Lily, fevered and small under the blanket, opened her eyes. "Daddy," she rasped. "You read it really bad." He looked down at her. "But I like it." It was the first time she had called him Daddy without the word Mr. attached. Dominic Castellano sat in a chair beside his sick daughter's bed and watched a single tear fall from his own face onto a page about a pig and a spider. He did not wipe it away. Lily had already closed her eyes again, smiling. He kept reading until his voice gave out. Constance arrived a little before noon with a covered Dutch oven in her own hands. She had not let the driver carry it in. Behind her, the kitchen staff stood in a small, confused row. Rose intercepted her at the door. "Grandma, why are you cooking? You have a chef." Constance set the pot down very carefully on the kitchen island. "Because you are my granddaughter," she said, "and only Grandma's chicken soup is real chicken soup." She had not made the recipe in over 30 years. She made it now from memory. Mia woke a little after 1 in the afternoon. She did not remember walking down the hallway. Her bare feet were cold on the tile. She stopped in the doorway of Lily's room. Dominic had fallen asleep in the chair. His head was angled forward, one hand still resting on the open book in his lap. Lily's small hand was curled around 2 of his fingers. Her fever had broken in the night. In the dining room down the hall, Constance was carefully spooning chicken soup into a bowl for Rose, who was sitting on a chair too tall for her, with her legs swinging and her napkin tucked into her shirt. Constance was telling her something quietly. Rose was nodding, very serious, between bites. Mia leaned against the doorframe and put her hand over her mouth and cried without making a sound. This was the family she had stopped letting herself dream about somewhere around year 4. Lily was up and walking again on the 5th day. The night Lily came down to the kitchen by herself for a glass of water. Mia and Dominic ended up out on the back terrace. The sound was very quiet. The lights from the dock were yellow. Mia pulled the shawl higher around her shoulders. "I was wrong," she said softly. "I was wrong to think you couldn't protect us." He did not answer right away. "You weren't wrong," he finally said. "I wasn't strong enough then. I am now." The next thing she did without thinking. She leaned sideways against him and let her temple rest on his shoulder. His arm came around her like he had been waiting 7 years for permission. "I have waited for you for 7 years, Mia," he murmured into her hair. "I will wait however long you need me to wait." She tilted her face up. "I don't need you to wait anymore, Dom." He kissed her, very carefully, the way a man kisses a woman he has dreamed about every single night for a very long time. It was the first time their mouths had met in 7 years. Neither of them counted it as the last. Salvatore Marchetti did not raise his voice when his daughter came home from the conservatory with red eyes and bruised pride. He simply sat at the head of the long oak table in his study, lit a Cuban from the humidor his father had left him, and watched her. "Castellano humiliated you," he said at last. "In front of his men, in front of his mother. He used the word wife about another woman in your hearing. Do you understand what this means, Vivian?" "I understand. It means we are no longer in a courtship dispute. We are in a war." He exhaled smoke. "And we are going to win it." Within 10 days, Salvatore had quietly summoned the heads of 4 smaller families, the Lombardo, the Ricci, the De Luca, and the surviving leadership of the Bonacci, to a basement in Bensonhurst where no phones were permitted past the iron door. He made them an offer. The Castellano docks, their distribution corridors, their political contacts, carved up 4 ways the day after Dominic Castellano fell. The vote was unanimous before midnight. To his daughter, in private, he gave one assignment. "Find his weakness, Vivian. Every man has exactly one. I want yours found by the new moon." Vivian already knew. She had already known since the day she had walked into a hospital room and seen a man who had once stood through 6 funerals without crying go pale at the sight of 2 little girls in unicorn pajamas. She did not need a new moon. She needed 3 weeks and a private investigator and 4 men whose loyalty came in cash. She watched the estate from a black SUV at a turnoff a half-mile from the gate. She learned the patterns. The grocery deliveries on Mondays, the pediatrician on Wednesdays. The afternoon walks Mia had started taking with both girls along the inside of the wall on dry days. She learned that Lily had been talking, since the start of October, about being Hermione Granger for Halloween, and that Rose wanted to be a vampire architect. Whatever that was. She made phone calls. She hired 4 ex-Special Forces contractors who had not been asked uncomfortable questions in over a decade. She circled October 31st on her calendar in the same red ink that Mia Hartley had once used on a contact in her phone. The night before Halloween, Constance found Mia alone in the library. Mia was standing at the long window with her arms folded, watching the girls run themselves into exhaustion on the lawn, under the watchful eye of 2 security men. Constance sat down in the armchair without speaking. After a long moment, she patted the cushion beside her. Mia came and sat. "I am going to tell you something. Constance said quietly. I have not told another woman this in 40 years. Mia waited. Antonio, Dominic's father. He did not die in a sit-down. He did not die over territory. Her voice was even. He died trying to put himself between a rival family and a young woman who was not part of any of this. A waitress from a restaurant we used to own in Bay Ridge. She had no idea who he was. He took 2 bullets meant for her. The third one was for him. Mia turned her head. He was 33. Dominic was 3. Constance's hands folded over the head of her cane. You are not the first woman a Castellano man has loved that the family did not approve of, Emilia. I was that woman. Before I became this woman, I was a girl from Red Hook with a dead father and a typing job. I survived by changing into something I could not be killed for. Into the person you met that night in the bathroom. I had wanted you to do the same. I thought it was the only way for any of us. She paused. But you chose differently. You chose your daughter's freedom over your own safety. And you chose it alone. And you carried it for 7 years. I did not know any woman could do that. Mia could not speak. Constance reached into the small velvet box she had brought with her. She took out a heavy ruby ring set in old yellow gold. The Castellano stone. The one Antonio had given her on a rainy afternoon in 1985. I am giving this to you, she said. I am not asking you to wear it in public. I am not asking you to wear it at all. But it is yours. Now, it belongs to the mother of my granddaughters. She slid it onto Mia's right hand. Mia closed her fingers around it and did not let it go. Halloween came in clear and cold. Lily wore a small black robe, a hand-stitched Gryffindor crest, and a pair of round, wire-rimmed glasses with no lenses. Rose carried a tiny black architect's portfolio and refused to explain what was inside it. Mia tucked them both into the back of the armored SUV at 3 in the afternoon. 2 security men rode up front. The plan was simple: 1 bookstore, 1 craft store, home before sundown. They were 8 minutes from the estate when the road narrowed through a wooded curve in Lloyd Harbor. A dark van pulled across the lane from the right. A second van swung in behind them. The driver reached for the radio. He did not get to it. The windshield exploded inward in a single white burst. Mia threw herself sideways across both girls in the back seat. Glass rained over her shoulders. Lily was screaming. Rose was not. 3 more rounds punched into the front of the vehicle. 1 driver slumped against the door. The other tried to draw his sidearm, and a 4th shot took him in the throat. Then silence. The kind of silence that was worse than the gunfire. The rear door was wrenched open. Hands grabbed Mia by the arm. A speaker on the dashboard crackled to life with a thin, recorded voice. Hello, Mia. Vivienne Marchetti's laugh. Do you remember me? They were hooded inside 90 seconds. The black bag came down over Mia's head first. She felt the same rough cloth pulled over each of her daughters in the same precise motion, and she heard Lily's whimper through her own canvas. Rose did not make a sound. Rose, who at 6 years old had already understood from her mother that screaming when the bad thing was happening was a luxury, not a strategy. The van smelled of motor oil and old cigarettes. Mia counted turns. She counted the rumble of bridge expansion joints. The Verrazano. They were going to Staten Island. 40 minutes later, the van rolled to a stop on dirt. The doors opened. They were marched into a long, abandoned warehouse with shattered skylights and pigeons in the rafters. Folding chairs, 3 of them, plastic zip ties. When the bags came off, Vivienne Marchetti was already pacing in front of them in a fitted black coat and red lipstick that had been applied unevenly. Her eyeliner had run on one side. There was a small tremor in her hands she could no longer control. Do you know what abandonment feels like, Mia? Her voice was bright and brittle. I waited 5 years for Dominic. I did everything right. The right finishing school, the right charity galas, the right dress at every gala. I learned the names of every capo's wife and birthday. And you walked out on him at 21 and left him with a hole in his chest. And the moment you walked back in carrying his children, he picked you. Just like that, like 5 years of mine were nothing. Mia did not look at her daughters. She did not let her face change. Vivienne, her voice was very steady. My children have nothing to do with this. Let them go. Keep me. Use me however you need to. No. Vivienne stopped pacing. Her smile was too wide. Your children are precisely my weapon. He'll hand me anything for them. Anything. Footsteps came in from the side door. Salvatore Marchetti walked in, flanked by 4 men. He glanced once at his daughter, a long, weary look, and then waved her aside the way a man waves a child away from machinery. That's enough, Vivienne. The negotiation is mine now. He pulled a phone from his pocket, switched on the camera, and dialed. In the study at the Long Island estate, Dominic was already on his feet when his phone rang. He had been on his feet since the moment Marco had not checked in at the second waypoint. He answered on speaker. The face on the screen was Salvatore. Behind him, blurred in the warehouse light, a woman and two small girls in black hoods that had been pushed back to bare their faces. Dominic's hand on the desk went the color of old paper. Castellano. Salvatore's voice was almost gentle. You have two options. Option 1. You sign over every Brooklyn dock contract, every shipping route, every political handshake on that waterfront, by midnight. Option 2. I return your family to you in 3 black bags. Lily made a sound on the screen. Mia turned her face slightly into Rose's hair, hiding it. Dominic did not blink. 1 hour. Give me 1 hour. 45 minutes. The line went dead. He turned to Tony Russo. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Wake every man we have. Full kit. The Staten Island warehouse on Richmond Terrace, the one we've been tracking Marchetti through for 2 years. They'll be there. I want 30 men staged in a half-mile perimeter in 20 minutes. Tony was already on his earpiece. Marco, the Beretta in my desk, the vest, and the sidearm I gave you when you turned 20. Marco said nothing. He turned to go. A cane tapped against the marble at the study door. Constance Castellano stood in the doorway in a black wool coat she had not worn since her husband's funeral. She had a leather case in her left hand. I am coming with you, she said. Mama, I will absolutely come with you. She set the case down on the desk and opened it. Inside, on green felt, was a 1973 Beretta Model 84, Antonio Castellano's sidearm, the one Constance had not let anyone clean but herself for 40 years. I was Antonio Castellano's wife, Dominic. I learned to shoot before you learned to walk. Don't argue with me. He did not argue. Back in the warehouse, Rose had been working at her sister's wrists for 12 minutes. She had watched a thriller over Dominic's shoulder 2 weeks ago. He had not realized she was awake, and she remembered exactly how the woman in it had angled her thumb to slip a zip tie off itself. She got Lily's free first. She tucked the loosened plastic loop carefully back into place, so it would still look bound from across the room. She inched her own fingers behind her own back next. Lily leaned her head sideways until it almost touched her mother's shoulder. Mommy, she whispered, so soft only Mia could hear. When Daddy comes, we run. The second he says go. Mommy, you have to live. Promise me. Mia could not turn her head. She could not let Vivienne see her face. A single tear slid down the side of her nose into the canvas of the lifted hood. I promise, baby, she whispered back. Mommy promises. At 11 o'clock at night, 3 black SUVs rolled to a stop along the tree line, a quarter-mile west of the warehouse on Richmond Terrace. The headlights had been off for the last 2 miles. 30 men in tactical vests stepped out into the cold without speaking. Dominic Castellano fitted a Kevlar plate against his chest, racked the slide on his sidearm, and looked once at the woman standing at his right elbow. His mother had her husband's Beretta in her right hand and the safety already off. Group A. Front-loading bay, he said quietly into the earpiece. On my mark, breach hard. Make as much noise as you can. I want every gun in that building looking the wrong direction. Group B comes in through the rear maintenance door with me and my mother. Tony, you take the perimeter. Nobody leaves on foot. The NYPD ETA is 14 minutes. We end this before they roll in. Marco nodded once. Move. The front of the warehouse exploded into white light and gunfire. Tony's team blew the loading bay off its hinges with a breaching charge. 6 Marchetti men opened up at the muzzle flashes, and 6 Castellano rifles answered them. Skylights rained down in glittering sheets. The huge hanging fluorescents shattered in chains. The whole warehouse went strobing dark and flash bright in the same heartbeat. Inside, Vivienne yanked Mia up out of her chair by the collar and pressed the muzzle of a small chrome pistol against her temple. Don't move, she screamed at the sound of the breach. Her voice cracked. Don't. Mia did not move. Mia did not need to. In the strobing dark behind her, 2 zip ties slipped silently to the floor. Lily and Rose moved exactly the way they had practiced in whispers. They dropped low. They scuttled along the floor under the curtain of gunfire. There was a maintenance hatch at the back of the warehouse, half rotted, that Rose had clocked the moment they walked in. She pried it open with the flat of her hand. Lily went through first. Rose followed. They came out into a gravel lot behind the building, into a wedge of cold air, into the running silhouette of a 62-year-old woman in a black wool coat with a Beretta in her hand. Grandma, Rose whispered. Constance Castellano dropped to her knees on the gravel and gathered both granddaughters into her arms with a force that knocked the air out of all 3 of them. It was the first time Rose had ever called her grandma with the unguarded trust of a child running to safety. Constance held them so hard that her cane fell forgotten beside her, behind the second SUV. Now, down on the floor of the back seat, heads under my coat. Do not move until I come for you. Both girls obeyed without a word. Inside the warehouse, Dominic and Salvatore Marchetti had finally found each other in the dark. Salvatore fired first. The round caught Dominic in the upper left shoulder and spun him half around. He went to one knee, raised the pistol with his right hand, and put a single round through Salvatore Marchetti's chest at 15 feet. The old Don was dead before his knees hit the concrete. "Father!" Vivienne's scream tore through the building. She wheeled, the chrome pistol still in her hand, and turned the muzzle toward Mia. For the first time in 28 years, Amelia Hartley moved without thinking. She drove her shoulder up into Vivienne's ribs. The pistol jerked sideways. Mia closed both hands over Vivienne's wrist and twisted it the way the night shift trauma nurses had once taught her to disarm an agitated patient. The chrome pistol clattered to the floor. Mia picked it up. She had it pointed at Vivienne's chest before her own hands stopped shaking. Vivienne's mascara had run down both cheeks. She was laughing, or sobbing, or both. "Do it," she spat. "Do it, you cheap little—" "No." Mia's voice was very quiet. "I am not you, Vivienne. I will not put a bullet in someone's chest in front of my children. Not even you." She set the pistol down on the concrete. Vivienne lunged for it. Marco's round took her cleanly through the meat of her right thigh from 20 feet away. She went down screaming. Sirens. Real ones now. The first NYPD cruisers were rolling up the dirt access road outside, lights washing red and blue against the broken windows. Dominic, on one knee, blood spreading dark down his left sleeve, raised his hand to his earpiece. "Stand down. All units, weapons grounded. The detectives I called are 5 seconds out. We are giving them Vivienne Marchetti and the 4 contractors. That's the deal." He pushed himself up. He found Mia on his way to the door. He grabbed her with his good arm and held her against his chest so hard he could feel her ribs shaking through her coat. "Are you hurt? Are you hurt? Where are the girls? Your mother?" Her teeth were chattering now that the adrenaline was leaving her. "Your mother has them. Outside, behind the second car." They half ran, half stumbled out of the warehouse together. Constance was sitting on the running board of the SUV with one granddaughter under each arm. Both girls were crying. Both girls were alive. Lily saw her father first. She reached out one small hand toward the dark stain spreading on his shoulder. "Daddy, you're hurt." Dominic Castellano knelt down on the gravel, in the strobing red and blue of police lights, and took both his daughters and his mother, and the woman he had spent 7 years grieving, into the only embrace his arms could still hold. "I'm fine, baby," he whispered into her hair. "I'm fine, because all of you are safe." The bullet had gone clean through. Dr. Reyes, pulled out of bed at 1 in the morning and driven to St. Catherine's by Marco, personally had Dominic on the operating table by 1:40 a.m. The round had missed the brachial artery by less than half an inch. Soft tissue damage, fractured scapula, 3 weeks in a sling, 6 weeks before he could lift anything heavier than a coffee cup with that arm. By any honest measure, he had been lucky. Mia did not leave his recovery room for 48 hours. She sat in the same kind of plastic chair he had once pulled up to her own hospital bed. She held the same hand she had once let him hold. She fell asleep with her cheek against his good arm and woke up every time a nurse changed the IV, the way a woman who had been a charge nurse for years would wake. The roles had reversed exactly. He had carried her out of a kitchen on Linden Street. She was carrying him through the part of him that had finally, in a warehouse on Staten Island, allowed itself to crack. The girls were brought in on the second afternoon. Lily climbed onto the bed first, very carefully, on the side that didn't have the sling. She unrolled a piece of poster paper she had been working on at the dining room table for 2 days. Crayon, stick figures, but with intention. A man, a woman, 2 small girls in unicorn pajamas, an older woman in pearl gray with a cane, all 5 of them holding hands in a single line. "This is us," Lily said quietly. "This is our family." Rose's drawing was less subtle. It was a pencil sketch in heavy strokes. Dominic, drawn taller than he actually was, in a long black coat, a pistol in his right hand, a cape that had not been on him in real life. The caption above his head, in red marker, "My dad is a superhero." Dominic, who had spent 2 days swallowing tears for the sake of the women watching him, finally lost the battle. Constance came on the 3rd morning. She did not bring flowers. She brought a small velvet box, the same kind she had carried the ruby ring in. She set it on the rolling tray over Dominic's lap and waited. He opened it with his good hand. Inside, on a fold of black silk, was a wedding band, plain, warm yellow gold, deeply scratched at the inner curve from 43 years of being worn through every kind of weather and grief. Antonio Castellano's wedding ring. Dominic looked up at his mother. He could not speak. "I think," Constance said, "the time has come for you to use this." "Mama, you." His voice caught. "You're saying yes?" "I said yes the moment Lily called me grandma on that gravel. I only needed to know whether she wished to stay. I've watched her for 2 days now. She has no intention of going anywhere." So, she closed the velvet lid back over his thumb. "Don't make her wait, Dominic. She's already waited too long." She kissed him on the forehead, the way she had not kissed him since he was 9 years old, and walked out of the room. The world outside the hospital had also been quietly remaking itself. Vivienne Marchetti was indicted on Friday. Kidnapping, conspiracy, attempted murder. The federal prosecutor offered no plea. The recommendation was 25 years. With Salvatore dead and the Marchetti capos suddenly leaderless, the family fractured along old lines inside 10 days. 3 of the smaller houses, Lombardo, Ricci, De Luca, sent envoys to the Castellano estate to formally request protection, the polite word for surrender. Dominic took the meetings from a hospital chair in a sling. He did not extract revenge. He extracted concessions. Then he made an announcement to his own people. 70% of our operations will be moved into legitimate business inside 18 months. Real estate, restaurants, construction. The technology fund Tony has been telling me about for 2 years, that one too. The docks stay. Nothing else does. Tony Russo, who had been Dominic's consigliere for 15 years, set down his coffee cup very slowly. "Boss, that is an enormous decision." Dominic looked out the hospital window at a thin, gray sky. "I am not raising my daughters in a world where they can be shot at on the way home from a craft store. We are done being that kind of family, Tony. We start being a different kind tonight." Mia, in the meantime, had quietly been handed the keys to the new Castellano Foundation. Her first project was a free pediatric clinic in Bushwick, 3 blocks from the building she had once raised twin girls in. A month after the warehouse, Dominic was cleared to walk without the sling. That night he led Mia, slowly, by her hand, out onto the back terrace. The sound was very black. The dock lights were yellow. The Castellano ring sat warm on her right hand, and his father's wedding band, for now, was still in the velvet box in his pocket. She wrapped both her arms around one of his. "I never imagined a life where I would get to stand somewhere this beautiful," she said softly. He turned his head until his temple rested against her hair. "And I never imagined a life," he said, "where I would get to stand here next to you." They didn't say anything else for a long time. There was finally nothing that urgently needed saying, just the lap of dark water against the dock, and her breath against his arm, and the lights of 2 small windows on the second floor where their daughters were already asleep. He started planning 2 days after the sling came off. Dominic Castellano had, in his life, planned the takedown of a federal informant, the burial of a cousin, and the largest dock acquisition in the borough. None of those operations had cost him as much sleep as the small velvet box in the inside pocket of his coat. He did not plan it alone. He went to the only 2 consultants he trusted with the assignment. Lily and Rose Hartley sat on the rug in his study with notebooks open on their laps. Lily had already written down a list. Rose had drawn what looked like a tactical map. "Where," he asked, very seriously, "would Mommy most want this to happen?" Lily did not even pause. "The Brooklyn Public Library on Eastern Parkway. The big one. With the gold doors. She's been taking us there every Saturday since we were 2. Rose tapped her pencil. "Saturday afternoon. Late. When the light comes through, the window's yellow. That's when she's happiest." He wrote both of these down. Constance, when consulted, made 1 phone call to a man on the library board. The library was quietly booked for a private event the following Saturday. The cost was not discussed. He chose the book from the worn collection on Lily's nightstand. Charlotte's Web, the same paperback held together with clear tape, the one Lily had read to her own mother on a hospital pillow. He opened it to the chapter where Wilbur is saved. He slid the ring between the pages and closed it again. That Saturday afternoon, Mia walked up the marble steps of the central library, expecting her usual quiet hour with her daughters and a cup of vending machine tea. The gold front doors were closed. She tried the handle. They opened. Inside, the great main hall was completely empty. No patrons. No librarians at the front desk. The afternoon sun was coming sideways through the tall arched windows and long honey-colored bars. In the middle of the children's wing, beside the same shelf they always used, stood Lily and Rose. They were holding Charlotte's Web between them. "Mommy," Lily called, in a voice that was a little too rehearsed. "Will you read us our favorite chapter?" Mia laughed, confused, charmed, already half walking toward them. Where is everyone, sweethearts? They went home, Rose said, with the perfect deadpan of a 6-year-old delivering a line. Just read. Mia took the book. She sat on the small reading bench. The girls climbed up on either side of her, the way they had 1,000 Saturdays before. She opened the cover. She turned past the front pages. The ring fell out into her lap, yellow gold, with a single deep ruby, the smaller companion stone to the one already on her right hand. Castellano read, scratched at the inner curve. Mia looked up. Dominic had come up silently behind the bench. He went down on one knee on the worn library carpet. His voice, when it came, was not the voice of a man who ran half a borough. It was the voice of a man who had spent 7 years rehearsing this moment in the dark. Amelia Hartley, 7 years ago I lost you because I was not strong enough to keep you safe. I made myself a promise that if I ever had the chance again, I would not let you walk away a second time. I cannot promise you a life without difficulty. I can only promise you that whatever difficulty comes, I will stand on your side of it. Will you marry me? Mia's tears were falling onto the open page about a pig and a spider. Do you really believe, she whispered, that I could say no to you? After everything you've given the three of us? Both girls erupted at once. Say yes, Mommy! Say yes! Mia laughed through her tears. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. He slid the ring onto her finger. The girls flung themselves at both of them. The 4 of them sat in a tangled embrace on a worn library bench in a sunlit, empty room. And the photograph the security camera quietly captured would later sit on the mantel of the Long Island house for the rest of their lives. Outside the tall glass doors, Constance Castellano stood in her pearl gray coat, with one gloved hand pressed to her mouth. She was 62 years old, and for the first time in her adult life, the weight she had been carrying inside her ribs since the morning her husband did not come home was simply not there anymore. She wiped her eyes once, very briskly, and walked away to give them the moment. Dear viewers, if this story moved you, here is what the Midnight Call really wants to leave with you tonight. Sometimes the people we love most are also the people we run from, because we are afraid the world will hurt them through us. Mia ran for 7 years, not because she stopped loving Dominic, but because she loved her daughters more than her own happiness. Dominic spent those 7 years not because he stopped looking, but because he believed her silence was a request he had to honor. Both of them were trying to protect something. Both of them were also losing something every single day they stayed apart. The truth is, this fear protects us only for a little while. Love, real love, asks us at some point to stop running, to turn around, and to choose the harder road of staying, of trusting, of letting the people we love stand beside us in the dark instead of carrying it alone. If you have ever held a secret because you were trying to keep someone safe, if you have ever walked away from the person you loved most because you were afraid of what staying might cost, this story is for you. If this video touched your heart, please give it a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it tonight, and subscribe to our channel. Every subscription helps us bring you more emotional, true-feeling stories like this one, every single day. We would love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone and being honest with them? Have you ever found your way back to someone after years of silence? Tell us your story. Your words may be exactly what another viewer needs to read tonight. Thank you for being here, for listening, for letting these characters live in your heart for a little while. We wish you good health, peaceful days, and a home full of people who choose to stay. Goodbye for now, and we'll see you in the next video.